Yes. Hello. It is a great day today. Thank you so much for joining us from anywhere you're joining us from today. And I'm happy to share with you that my guest is live with me, and her name is Vivian, but we will popularly call her V. So
Yeah.
she will be joining me today to be able to give perspective to what we call how to build a corporate career. And I know I've shared in the past, but I will let Vivian do an introduction of herself, and we can take it off from there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ayala. Hi, everyone. My name is Vivian Eni. You can call me Viv. Who am I? I'm an author. I just published a book recently on how to build a corporate career, lessons from a first generation migrant. So that kind of gives you a hint about my intro, right? Or where I'm coming from. In terms of my background and my trade, I'm a career coach. I'm also a business and personal coach, and I'm a HR leader. I have been in the profession of HR in the last almost 2 decades now. And in those times, I've worked across 5 different industries. I was originally born and raised in Nigeria, but I'm based now in the UK and I live in London. So, hi, this is me, and we're going to be talking about how to build a corporate career. Okay,
Hey,
Ayala,
thank you
back
so
to you.
much. Thank you so much, Vivian. And for that short introduction. So one thing I'm going to start with is for you to be able to mention briefly your career journey. And I think it would do a lot of good for everybody joining us today.
Okay, so thank you again for that question. I love it when people ask me, how did it begin? How did you get here? Whilst I share that, if you can hear us and you can see us, I'd like you to just tell us in the comments where you are joining from. I love knowing the locations that people are joining from. So if you can type in the comments where you're joining from, that would be amazing. How did I get here? So, my career is not linear. When you read my book, you will laugh a lot, but it's my journey and my
Mm,
story. So my background, I'm one of the people that you call a genius kid. I came to realize that now that I live in the UK, when a kid is super smart, I am that super smart kid. I was in university at the age of 14 plus. So I did my 15th birthday at uni. And I started out by studying medicine because I was smart, I was good with science subjects, and my parents thought it would be nice to have a doctor in the family. Just my glasses because that was not my wish. I don't like medicine. I do not like studying. I'm not studious. I'm intelligent, but I'm not studious. So I did medicine for about 2 years. I hated it. And then I left medicine and I have a first degree in microbiology. So I'm still a microbiologist at heart. Forget everything else you see on LinkedIn today. I'm a microbiologist at heart. So I have a first degree in microbiology. And then move on from there. I won't tell you the long story, but I have a master's in HR. So I know we're going to talk about the Y's, the W's, but I moved from medicine to microbiology to human resources and also moved countries after my first degree to the UK. So I did a master's in HR here in the United Kingdom at De Montfort University in Leicester. And since then, that was in 2007, I've been working in HR. So, how did I get here? It was my parents having their dream of having a medical doctor in the family, and then me deciding to divert my career because it was my choice, it's my life at the end of the day. And somewhere along the line in the last 4 years, I trained to become a coach. So I'm also an associate of the International Coach Federation, popularly known as the ICF. So that's my journey on how I got here.
Thank you so much. I deliberately asked for that because I want people to be able to hear for the horse's mouth. Because I realized that, excuse me, I realized that most of the time people only see you now, but they never knew that those 20 years, what you're doing. When I saw that, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to share this. I think I will let you say it yourself because I've seen that. Let me quickly say this: people sometimes don't even know the career path they really
Mm-hmm.
want. So, which gives us that sense of saying that we'll be touching, and I know you are very vast in this. You'll be able to use the 5 W's and H of how to build a career corporate career.
Okay.
And the first one, which is always critical, is when people say start with your why, which is the first one, the first W, why. Why did I choose this career, or why do I need to choose this career? So when people say start with your why, what can you say to that in helping the audience to be able to understand how they can build a corporate career?
That's a very pertinent question. I think I started with that in the first chapter of my book. It's interesting. That statement stands out to me because there's a guy that I appreciate his wisdom so much, Simon Sinek. He has a book, Start With Why. So if after this session, some of this doesn't make sense, probably go and read Simon Sinek's book. But my why was, and it's also okay. It's also okay if you don't know which career path you want to go on to. It's fine. I did not know this 20 years ago, but I had a goal, and this is where my why started from. So, backstory is I was already doing good in my country of birth, Nigeria. I was I come from an entrepreneur family, and before the age of 23, I had made my first 1 million naira doing business, even under my parents' household, right?
Mm.
So because I like money, money is included in my why. So when I decided I was going to study the HR and go into the profession that I went into, the basic reason why I chose HR was I wanted to be able to have a job because I had a life in Nigeria, which was good. And I chose to move to a different country, which is the UK. I did not want to pigeonhole myself. I wanted to give myself fluidity. So I said to myself, you will always need humans in every industry, which means I will always have a job as a HR professional. It was that simple. And why do I always want to have a job? Excuse me. I need to be able to replicate the similar lifestyle that I had back in Nigeria.
Mm.
Somebody needs to pay the piper. I'm not paying the bills by just smiling. My career, my profession, and I also knew that I didn't want a job. You know, there's a difference, Ayola, between a job and a career. I didn't want a job. I needed a path, and I knew that a path meant a building, and building takes time. So imagine coming out of my master's degree. I have this paper. My parents are flown in from Nigeria to celebrate me, and there's no job because it was the financial crisis of 2008. But I knew that the first foot I set into whatever gets me, and we'll come to talk about that in a bit, whatever gets me into HR, I'm going to get to the top because the top is where the money is. Can you see how I will always have a job because I want to replicate the lifestyle I had in Nigeria to I will build this career because I want to get to the top because that's where the money is. So either way, I was going to pursue the money. I was going to pursue the lifestyle, but I was going to do it through building a career, not just getting a job.
Mm. Perfect. Because from what you said a path meant building. And to build
Yes.
something, it takes time. Because
Yes.
most of the time, I've seen that people only want to be, but they don't want to go through that process,
Yeah.
which is very critical. So, from what you
Yeah.
said you needed to be at the top. And to be at the top does not happen by chance, it's
No.
a process, it takes time. And
Absolutely.
it is an intentional act where most of the time people don't respond to. So that takes me to the next thing. So the next thing is, what do I do? Or the other way is, what do I choose? Or what career path do I then go for?
Okay. So I'm a coach. So I'm going to throw some questions out at the audience so that they can tinker on it, write it down, go and reflect on it after now. So, what do I do? First question is, let's think about your core strengths. Let's think about your gift. I'm a big believer that if we all operate in our gift, Ayola, life will be so easy and so beautiful. So I
Very
built
true.
my career around my gift, around my talent, around the thing that I'm a Christian. So I'm going to use the God analogy. Around the thing that when God was sending me out of heaven, when he pushed me down, the only thing he gave me was this or a couple of things. But so, what are your strengths? In my book, I talk about being the one kid that in nursery school, in kindergarten, when a new student came in, when a new pupil came into the class, my teacher brought them to my table because they won't lack friends.
Mm.
That's relationship skills. That's somebody that easily builds and is able to manage and potentially maintain relationship. So my gift is relationship. Put me anywhere, I'll find my way because there's people and they have mouths. Even if they don't talk, we'll figure a way out. So what is your gift? And I remember reading through the syllabus because I was on a business trip in Dubai when my friend said she was moving to the UK. And I was like, what about me? What about our business that we come to Dubai together? And she was like, I'm going to Leicester. You can have the brochure. And I was going through it and I was like, what do I want to study? And I was reading, what does each of these modules, what do they mean? And by the time I got to HR, I was like, okay, these humans, okay, one of the skills you need to be able to live with people and that is relationship. So what is your gift? Another way to figure out your talent is what is the thing that people always come to you for? What's that thing that somebody will ring you rudely at midnight and just say, Ayala, because you're the guy, you're the go-to guy, you're the fall guy when it comes to this thing. Everybody else has their talent, but you see that thing they come to you with. Another thing was talking. I remember someone once said to me, Vivian, when God sent you out of heaven, the only thing he gave you was talking. I felt insulted. This was 5 years ago. I thought the person meant I talked too much. Actually, names of noisemaker list, I was always the top. So I know I talk too much, but don't tell me that I talk too much as an adult. Do you see what I mean? Again, talking. Because I can have conversations. How do you get people to get on your side, to get on board, to understand what they are meant to be doing? How do you get leaders? Because I'm a HR leader, right? How do I get my business leaders how do I steer them in the direction? It's communication. So relationship and communication, talking were my two gifts. And on top of that, you look at your history. My history shows I'm smart. I always came top of my class. What that translates to when you think about a career is whatever I set my mind to do, I go read them, I go pass them. So I'm intelligent. I can interpret whatever you give me to do. With those three things, I was able to decide what career path. But the career path didn't suddenly appear to give you leadership. It took building.
Thank you so much for this. This is profound. So I'm going to ask a further question because I've seen, is it necessary that people need to follow the career path of what is studied in school? Is the question. And I know I've gotten this question times without number. I will speak to it, but I want to hear from you first.
No, especially in this generation. Because in our time, you studied engineering, you were an engineer. You studied law, you were a lawyer. I have a story in my book where I reference the part where I did advert modeling. So for Unilever or something, not Unilever, I think it was a bakery. They had my face on the billboard and on the van. And my dad said it translates to prostitution because everybody across the country is going to see my face. Social media, it's unfortunate my dad is passed now because the social media, people know your kitchen. Do you see what I mean? So 10 years ago, if you said you were a content creator, people, content what? We don't understand it, but people are making a living off content creation. So when I think about what you're going to study, find something you enjoy doing. And do me a favor, get the best out of your degree, both by experience, learning, and if you can, come out at the top. Because when you come out at the top and you now went to a good uni, you've already showed yourself to get into a career path or a job that gives you flexibility to decide, do I like this? Do I not like this? Because at the time when you're picking what you're studying, remember my first degree was picked for me, but thankfully I diverted it. Most first degrees are picked for you. Society, pressure, parents who are paying the bills. My second degree, I picked it. Excuse me. And there's a story in my book as well where my father didn't realize he was paying for masters in human resources. Between you and I, he thought he was paying for masters in biotechnology and something because he wanted me to further and get a PhD. Do you see what I mean? So you do not have the luxury sometimes with your first degree to decide what you want. You could, but it's okay. Get the best out of it. Get the experience that university gives you and the maturity it gives you. And do me a favor, get a first class if you can. Get a 2-1 if you can. Because again, it then translates to my situation where I'm the genius kid because it then says he's smart, she's smart. So I can probably give her a chance.
Thank you. So the reason why I asked that question was very profound because I know I've seen that in your book. But And I think I have almost the same story. I study mass communication, right? Well, I'm a human
Okay.
resource professional today. And I've seen people
Mm,
that are lawyers, barristers, they're in human resource. And I've also seen someone that studied music in school.
yes.
And the guy is an accountant, very good at what he's doing. So that I asked that question because I know that sometimes when you explain to people that not necessarily that you have to practice what you studied in school. So in some cases, if you choose to, that is fine, also fine. And if you also choose not to, that is also fine because the bottom line is knowing what, from what you said, what you are gifted at or you are gifted in helps you to be able to identify what career path you need to follow. Because I've also seen sometimes that is where the challenge comes when when you don't know what you want, anything that you are given, you accept it. And
Yes.
over time, it becomes frustrating and you just feel like, oh, I'm just on this job for nothing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And let me say this: I know sometimes when people share their stories, it comes with vulnerability, but I've also seen that it helps. That is what drives home the point. I don't know if your dad has been able to say it's fast. So I don't know before you pass, you're able to say, "Oh, dad, this is what it's like, not what you are thinking it is," because it goes a long way. And I know, but as professionals these days, we have people that are young as a professional. We have people that are parents as a professional. This is might not be for you in the long run, might also be for your kids to be able to help them identify what they are naturally gifted at and guide them on that. Because the only thing that we can do as parents these days is to support and make sure that they have one of the best career. And with the help of technology, things have changed. People have finished their course in school and at the end of the day went back to study what they love. There
I
is
could not
always
agree more.
reason.
I
Yeah.
could not
That,
agree more. I'm
that,
not a parent yet, right? But my biggest prayer every day when I think about the gift of parenting, I say to God, help me to identify what you brought my
mm,
children here for. I don't want them to have wasted lives. It doesn't have to be the pigeonhole that I was used to, or it doesn't even have to be something I've heard of before.
mm,
I want to stay open minded. And I also want to say to parents, don't feel you've done your child a disservice because sometimes you picked the career out of. I'll tell you why I think my parents asked me to be a doctor. They said I can treat my family. They forgot that as a doctor, you cannot treat your family. That's the
that's
problem
it.
number one. Second, there was the prestige part of it. My daughter is a doctor. That was part two. But also at the time, the careers were accountant, engineer, doctor,
Yeah,
lawyer,
common thing.
or idiots. So HR kind of fell into the idiot bucket because nobody knew what it was about. Do you see where I'm coming from? So
That's
it
true.
came from a perspective of, I want you to be able to sustain yourself when I'm not here and when you're older. Because
Mm,
what's the point paying and funding all this education if I still have to look after you or worry about you when you're older? So it was from a good place. Do you see
mm.
what I mean? So
Yes,
if you're a
please.
parent and you're listening, I do not want you to feel like, oh my God, I've done my child a disservice. No, no, no.
No.
Eventually they'll find their own way. And if you're a person who has influence of your parents because they're funding it and genuinely you're just respectful of your parents' decision because they know better in most cases, it's okay. What I'm asking of you is enjoy your first degree. If
Yeah,
you're in a program you don't like, switch if you can, take a gap year if you can, just so that you can do one of my biggest value, my one of my most important value, Ayola, is joy. I have
yeah,
to enjoy everything I do.
that's true. Same
I
here.
enjoyed biology so much in secondary school. So when I was leaving medicine and I had a stint in microbiology in my first year, I knew that whatever I was going back to, I had to do biology because then I didn't need to study so much to pass. I just
Mm,
enjoyed it. So I would naturally do good at it. This is what my first degree was over 25, 27 years ago. I still remember my dissertation.
mm,
I enjoyed it. I was in the course. Don't blase through school, it's a wasted life.
That's
Switch
true.
to a program you enjoy because it would teach you life skills. It will help you be more mature, and you have something for conversation starters. When people say, "What degree do you have?" You can talk with your full chest
Mm-hmm.
about what you studied. Whether you have a career in it, it's a different kettle of fish.
That's
So
true.
just with where you are, get the best out of it and then decide what career. Because over time, I say to early career people when I talk to them, in your first 5 years and you get a job, do any job. The
Mm,
career will
I agree.
form itself.
Over
So I
time.
chose HR and so I followed HR. But there was also the question of what industry am I going to be in? It wasn't clear. So I did
Mm.
7 industries. And I know that Ayola, you couldn't pay me to work in financial services. God forbid bad thing. I ain't doing it. I like it. The banks, they keep my money, I invest with them. That's all they're getting from me.
Mm.
But take me out of consulting, business, or technology, and I'm a fish out of water. I
Yeah.
love technology. I love the businesses and the people I support. You can see I've come alive just talking about my
Yeah.
industry.
Sure.
But it took me going through manufacturing,
Mm.
outsourcing, banking. I had to go through 5 or 7 industries to then go, this one, this one has my name on it. So
Mm-hmm.
similarly, when you're stepping out into at the beginning of a career, especially those that get graduate program, do anything, don't worry. You know,
Right.
by year 3, year 4, it will start to form. You will start to see the
Mm.
things that play to your strength and the things that challenge you and the things you wake up to and you're like, oh, I can't wait to
Mm.
get to work today. But if you're
Mm.
like, okay, I'm just going to do this, you're pigeonholing yourself. You're not giving yourself opportunity to experience the fullness of what life brings to you, because eventually you will always get to pick. You will always get to
Mm.
specialize. Don't specialize too early. That's another
Yeah.
thing. Don't specialize
Very,
too early.
very profound. So I know that what you said resonated with me because I realized that I think in my first year in school was when I discovered that I love to be able to help people, help them improve their processes and develop. And I couldn't find a career at that moment because I was trying to ensure that I know
Yeah.
what I'm doing. But by the way, there are over 6 professions that I can tool in mass communication, which I'm not practicing any of those 6. But the only thing I realized is that I was able to discover that when I went for an internship. And I'm like, okay, I think I would like to. I was I was in the administrative department,
Okay.
and my manager was asking me, when you are done with school, what do you want to do? I said, I would like to be able to be in human resource. So like, oh, really? And I don't forget his name, Mr. Adinekon. He just took me and said, "Yeah, let's go to this person." And he took me directly to HR and dropped me
Wow.
there. So sometimes that is why it's good to know what you want. Fine. And let me also say that if you don't know what you want, from what you said, and I think I've shared that with people, do every job you need, you lay your hands on after graduation. First 5 years is like a developmental phase where you will discover yourself. If you have not, it's not a problem. You will discover yourself, and from there you'll be able to say, "Oh, this is what I love to do. I am very joyful at doing this. I'm passionate about doing this. I feel alive when I do this." Not on a Monday morning, you are like, "Oh, it is Monday again." How do you feel? The way you feel matters, and that also will help you to be able to
Mhm.
say, "Oh, this is what I'm doing." And like you said, never quote unquote be a specialist from the beginning of your career because
Can
it
I?
will help you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll
Can
pause.
I
Go ahead.
tell you how I got my first HR job? To
Go
the
ahead,
point
please.
you just made about do any job. I had a degree. There was financial crisis. There were no jobs. People said you needed experience to get a job. If you don't give me a job, how do I get experience? Catch
Hmm.
22. So I remember being back in the UK after I went to Nigeria after my graduation. I was back in the UK. I knew in my heart I needed to be back here. How and why? I needed to be back here. And I said, I'll get a job. I'll just get something. I got this job sharing flyers at a superstore called Morrison
Hmm.
in front of this massive grocery store that's Saturday, I was sharing flyer. Like I said, I have to enjoy everything I do. So there was this girl, Anusha. We were sharing flyer. We were chatting. Sometimes I was dancing. I don't need music to dance. I'm just joyful. It was that day, Ayola, that everybody in my local church decided to come and do grocery shopping. And I was at the door with my master's degree flyering. I was partly embarrassed, but we're here. We're out of the house. So I was sharing the flyer. I'm assuming Anusha, the lady I was sharing the flyer with, observed me after a while and she said, "Would you like a job?" I said, "Any job sitting down?" "Yes, please." And I said, "I have a master's degree in HR and I really want to do human resources." So she said, "Okay, might not be a HR job, but I'll talk to my boss about you." Eventually, she got me to interview her boss and eventually hired me for this outsourcing company that did bank statement quality assurance. So you QA bank statements for the big banks. The moment I walked into that job, everybody that cared to know, Ayola, I told them I had a master's degree in HR and I wanted to start a career in HR. 3 months down the line, a role opened up upstairs in HR. Everybody on the shop floor came to me. Viv, because I was a contractor, so I wouldn't have seen the vacancy. "Viv, have you seen it? Have you seen the vacancy? You should apply. You should apply." My boss then comes to me and says, "We need a friend upstairs." That's how I applied for the job. So if I turn down the flyer in because it's beneath me,
Mm.
if I turn down going to do QA for bank statement because I have a degree in HR, it would not lead me. The paths are never straightforward. Now, do I even remember the code I was feeling that day?
No?
No, but I'm
Uh,
grateful for the experience.
Thank you so much, Vivi, for sharing that. Like you are taking it from my mind. So, because I realized that sometimes people don't show up. Showing up sometimes is critical. No matter the degree, master's, PhD, just sometimes show up. Be
Yeah,
receptive enough to show up. And
yeah,
I think you are taking it from my mind. So the next W, we have been able to speak to um why,
yeah.
starting with your why. I've been able to, I think we have to spend a lot of time on what, because it's very critical. Because if you really know what you want, every
Mm,
other thing comes handy. So what is very also important and critical. And I'm going to speak to ask you about this. The third one is who do I speak to?
mm.
And this is a place of, I would say, mentorship, colleagues, managers. And who do I learn from? What
Hmm.
can you say to that?
We are in such a privileged position today because in the past, you wanted to do X and you're the only person you know who has that desire. Today, you can go on
Mm,
YouTube and say, "I want to be a data scientist living in Namibia." And you will find somebody that's made a video about being a data scientist in Namibia.
yeah.
You go on LinkedIn, there are courses on LinkedIn Learning. There are courses on Coursera. There's all these platforms that has courses that speak to what you wanted to do. So that's one. You can train. There's certifications, there's free stuff, there's paid stuff. That's one.
Mm,
Another who is the people. Sometimes you may need to get close enough to somebody who's doing it. Close enough could be
mm,
two ways. You can have a mentor. You can have a mentorship, does not necessarily need to only be someone who's gone ahead of you. You can have a peer mentor. I had a friend who we were navigating this thing called HR together 17, 18 years ago because we both had a master's, we both had the same vision. And so we peer mentored each other. She learned something, she taught me, I learned something, I taught her. If you have the privilege of getting someone who's already gone ahead of you so that you can take their recipe and apply it to your situation, that's who a mentor is. You can get that. You can also get an advisor. You can get somebody who you go and think out loud with, and they help you collect your thoughts. And then you can make decisions or conversations with them. You can get an accountability partner, somebody who reminds you that you said you want to become a data scientist. I appreciate that you're working at the grocery store now because you need to put food on the table. You have a family. What are we doing towards this data science? Which courses are you going for? What are you doing with the spare time after work? They say 9 to 5 and 5 to 9. What's the deadline by which date you
mm,
are in data science as a career? You can also get that accountability partner. You can get your friends, people to help you, because the journey to building anything is not always fun. I attended 13 interviews before I got my first HR job. And that 13 interview was across months. So mental health is now something we can label today, but I'm sure I suffered mental health breakdown throughout that process. And it was
Without
friends
knowing.
and family, and exactly, it was friends and families and loved ones who were able to pick me back up and say, it's okay. It's okay. I remember my father of blessed memory used to give me interview allowance. Bless him. He's like, you're
Wow.
traveling again. So this is how you're going to fund it. And that gave me comfort and courage to keep pushing. So
Yes.
a mentor is a good one because they've gone ahead of you. You can also get books.
Yeah, very true.
In the area you want to
Very
go and
true.
read the books. You know, these days, when I think about something I don't know, I have something in my bathroom mirror which says spend half an hour on a Monday to study on a subject that you know nothing about. So throughout the day, throughout the weekend, if I hear something, I'm like, design thinking, what is that? Best believe before I start work on Monday, I can now teach you design thinking, because
That's
I've now scheduled half an hour in my personal calendar to just educate myself. I can read short books on Get Abstracts. There's
yeah.
so O'Reilly. There's so many places where you can quickly upskill yourself. We have AI. We have Copilot. You can ask Copilot, how do I start a career? I don't know who wants to be a data scientist tonight, but it's just in my head. How do I begin? I am a doctor. How do I begin a career in data science? AI, Copilot, ChatGPT will create the path for you,
Very
and you
true.
can follow it step by step.
Very, very true. Because I've seen that sometimes there's what we call learning by doing is
Yes.
very, very important because what you don't know, there's somebody that has done it. There are somebody that people have done it and you put it there online. You just need to Google it. Or if you want to use AI, you want to use ChatGPT, there's always something that you can learn. And like when you mentioned a doctor, I think I know someone that is a doctor, medical doctor,
Mm-hmm.
that changed their career. They changed their career because maybe they were in that field because of parent, maybe, or they are not finding fulfillment. Because sometimes you might think, oh, I'm doing this. But I've also learned that sometimes you need to do what quote unquote you don't like,
Yeah.
maybe at the beginning, to be able to fund what you like or what you have passion for, what you have interest for, because that is what helps you. And I can say that for me, the place of mentor is very, very critical. And I think when we are having conversation, I mentioned one of my mentor, Dr. Dairo Lumo, easy access. I was the one that sent him a chat. I said, oh, I would like to help you with this when you land. He was coming for a conference, for instance. And I'm like, okay, I would like to be able to be your assistant, associate, and work with you on this. And so, oh, fantastic. And that gave me leverage. And in the same conference you were speaking, I was able to also be a speaker at the same conference because why? I showed up and I gave a service. And I think I'm going to speak to that in a moment. So the next W is where. The question is, where do I start from? Um,
Hmm. Where do you start from? There's so many places. There's something called volunteering. It says giving your
fantastic.
time to somebody who did. You just explained that with Dr. Dyer, your experience with
Hmm.
him. Volunteering your time in the area you're keen on. I remember volunteering during my dissertation as part of my second degree. I did not get the full extent of my volunteering because at the time, hindsight is 2020. I didn't don't think I appreciated the opportunity I had. That could have been my
Hmm.
first HR job, because I had the opportunity, I had this privilege of working 2 days a week for this charity as an administrator.
Hmm.
What says in a few months' time or a year's time, considering I didn't have a job in HR, what difference did it make? That there might not be a job that came up, or that role might not evolve into something linked to HR. Do you see what I
Hmm.
mean? But at that time in my head, I was like, I need to get a paid job. No, you need experience as well.
Hmm.
So I would
Very true.
say to you, find somebody who's already doing something. And if they need help, go and be their apprentice.
Volunteer. Hmm.
Go and be their apprentice. Because what you will learn from there for free is what you're going to be hired for.
Yes, please.
And when you volunteer and you write your CV, there is no obligation to label it volunteering.
Yeah. If they
You are
ask,
working on, when they ask you, you
yes,
can have that conversation,
session.
but you're
Yeah.
working. I know somebody who at the time we were just having conversation about them volunteering for me, and we were then looking for how we're going to get them into the paths that they want to. As we speak, they've started in the path they wanted to, because we happened to be in a conversation, and then I met somebody, and then the person says, oh, I'm the head of da da da, and we were like,
Really?
can you help us? They had just, the dinner was to have conversation on how they were going to volunteer with me.
Mm.
But we positioned that conversation, she volunteers with me. And the person was like, oh, maybe I can. They've started. So it's, if they didn't leave their house that day, they
Showing
probably
up.
won't be on the path they are today.
Mhm.
So you can volunteer, you can find somebody. There's always somebody who needs help, especially small businesses. Whatever you want to
Mm.
do, find them. They are on LinkedIn as well. I know somebody who got a volunteering with a startup because they wanted to get into business analysis, and they became the pseudo part of the business analysis team
Mm.
because what they had was time and they needed experience.
Yeah.
So go and ask people, go and volunteer. That's one way. Okay. What else would I think of? Get any job. Get any job. Any job will give you human relationship experience, which you would need in
Yes,
every
yes.
job. Any
Mm-hmm.
job will give you customer service. Any job will give you work ethics. Okay? You are entitled to have three careers, a wise friend of mine once said, as part of your career lifetime. Not your whole lifetime, but your
Yeah.
career lifetime. I was an entrepreneur from the age of 9 till 20, to my 20s. And then I started HR, and I've done it for almost 20 years. And then in between that, I started a coach, and now I'm a public speaker and an author. So get any job. That's another place to get in, because it might just be in that any job conversation that the person
Mm.
says, oh, we need a data scientist in this. I didn't know that you had a degree in data science. And then you just suddenly go from carpentry to data science.
Mm. Thank you so much. So I know for every thing you're saying, yeah, it resonates with me perfectly. Uh, I know. I remember when I was trying to do my 1 year internship after my first 2 years, and there was no space. I've submitted my resume in different places. Some will say, "Oh, thank you so much." Some will acknowledge, some will not. And let me also say this: when you submit your resume,
Mm,
sometimes by the time you are going to organizations, be rest assured that some will acknowledge, some will not. And I've done that, and I decided to go for an entrepreneurship training. And from that entrepreneurship training, I met someone, and I'm like, "Oh, I think I would like to work with you. I love doing this." It was like, "Oh, there's no vacancy." I said, "Okay, you know what? Because I love what you're doing, and I would like to learn from this. It's a startup organization." And I said, "I'll volunteer for you." And he was like, "Oh, really?" I said, "Okay, come for an interview." You mentioned books. I'm a student of books. So one thing that helps me also as side mentors, role models, is learning from books, learning from people through their books, even if I've never met them in person. And I got to the interview table, and it was like, "Oh, we think we're talking about talent." And I said, "Oh, there's this book." And I said, "Oh, I've read it. Do you know that that was what we discussed throughout the interview?" And I left, and I resumed for the job. Few months down the line, they started, they said, "You know what? You can't be a volunteer. We have to pay you for this." But the bottom line is, if I did not, so that's where is very important. If you don't show up to be able to say, "Oh, I'm doing this, I can do this," and he asked me, can you do this?" I said yes. Even when I don't know how to do it, I will say yes. Go back to people, go back to Google, learn it, design. And he had a philosophy, which I think I also have, is if you can do or design a presentation or curriculum, you should be able to present it. That is one of my philosophy. If you
I
can
agree. I
design
agree.
a presentation,
I
and
agree.
till tomorrow, that stuck with me. And that has been part of my life. And that has given me platform, it has given me different places I've consulted for different financial institution back in Nigeria, and it was a privilege, right? But also an intentional act. So that takes me to the last
Yeah.
W, which is when. When, for me, I would say take a prompt action. So sometimes when you discover that, oh, this is the time that you discover that, oh, this is what I want to do,
Hmm.
it's never too late. That is the right time. So for you, what would you say to when it comes to
No,
building a career?
no, just start from where you are today.
Mm,
Today, tomorrow is far and tomorrow is not guaranteed. Today, what is the
mm,
one small step you can take towards? We've given you a lot of nuggets for you to think on. Maybe a start would be answering those questions for yourself. What is my gift? What is my talent? What do I enjoy doing? Where am I now? Where do I want to be? And what's the gap in between? What are my
mm,
barriers? In tech, we say blockers. What are my blockers? Who can help me? Who already is doing what I'm trying to do? Who do I know? Who don't I know? What
mm,
do I have? What don't I have? Understand your gaps, understand your capabilities.
mm.
Now, you
Now,
can answer those questions now. Grab a pen and paper and answer those questions now. This is why I wrote my book the way I wrote it. And at the end of each chapter, I tell you to put the book down, get a pen and paper, and answer questions. Because as a coach, I want you to find your own way.
mm,
So, what is it I want to do? Draw a picture. People talk about 5, 10 year plan. Draw a picture of what the career you want to get into. What does it look like? People who are in those careers, what are they about? What do they even wear? Where do they hang out? So that way you start to form a picture, and that picture starts to show you the gap between where you are now and where you want to be.
mm,
I knew that the gap between me starting out in HR and being a HR leader is being able to solve business problems. That's one. Being able to develop people, that's another one. Being able to create an environment where people bring their best self to work so that we get the best out of our talent. And of course, that triggers to the bottom line of any business.
mm.
But at the time, I didn't even know what strategy meant. So I asked myself, what is strategy? What does it mean to be a business partner? What does a HR director do? So at least if I know the definitions and the understanding of those things, it gives me clarity on what I'm working towards. Why did I do this? I started my career in the middle of financial crisis where there were no jobs. So I started out, the opportunities I had were short-term contracts. So I had to start, I looked at the 8 areas at the time, according to CIPD, that HR has. And at the end of each contract, I say to myself, what do I know? What don't I know? So that I found contracts that fulfilled needs of my HR professional gaps. And I got to a point I realized that recruiters had pigeonholed me into
Mm,
restructure and change
mhm.
management, and I'd
Yeah.
become very good at it. And so I said to myself, I don't know the other 5 areas of HR. So I'm going to go and find a generalist role. And that's when I got my first business partnering role 12 years ago. And when I did that role for one of the big fours for 4 years, I had done end to end of HR. And so I knew that when I got to 10 years of my career, I could say I'm a HR professional on my full chest because I've seen it. But if I didn't answer these questions I'm asking you today, I will not get there. I would just be turning up to a job and I wouldn't know where I need to go. So I ask you again, where are you now? Where do you want to be? Where does what you want to be look like? What are the things that people who are where you want to be do? What is the job title? How do they think? Where do they hang out? How did they get there? And where are you? And it will become obvious what your gaps are. And then you put it into Google, put it into AI, put it into ChatGPT, look in your environment of people, your network of people, and the network of your networks. And then you start to find who can help me. And then in that who can help me, find your support network so that you don't give up in the journey. That's what I would
Thank
say.
you. Thank you so much. And let me say this. We have been able to touch we're on starting with your why, knowing what you want and what you are looking for. Who do you speak to? Mentors, colleague, friends. Where are you starting? Start with what you have. Start from where you are. And when, start now. And I don't know if you agree with me. The last one, which is the age, has answered all these questions. So when you start with your why, knowing what you want, who do you speak to, where, and how, that is the age. I don't know if you have what to say to that. That is the age for me because that is how you understand your gap. You know that there's a gap. You have to fill it. You know you don't know what you want. You have been able to align with people, mentor, friends, colleagues. That is it. And let me also say that how also is about how you react or respond to the situation. So, for instance, you made mention of attending interviews, you didn't get a job. And let me also say that over the years, I realized that sometimes when we don't get a job, does not make us less of ourselves. The only thing that I've seen that happen sometimes is just the other candidate maybe just have a slightly mark above you. That doesn't make you less. So
Or,
sometimes, okay, go ahead.
or you just might need some more time. So
Period.
those 13 interviews I didn't get the job were my HR experiences because I had this notepad at the time called my HR Bible, which is the
Mm,
foundation with which I wrote my book. So that
mm,
HR Bible, at the end of every interview, I ran into a quiet place immediately and I wrote down the questions they asked me. I wrote down my answers and I saw where my gaps are.
great,
So I was sharp for the next one. So by the 13th time,
great.
as a HR administrator, the interviews are the same. By the 13th time, I was smiling through it. Because all the
Mm,
questions they've been asking me, now they're asking me again. I'm going to say it. What they didn't realize was I didn't have experience. My experience were those interviews. You just might
mm.
need more time.
Yeah. So thank you so much for saying that because that is one thing that I see that has happened over the years. And I
Mm.
think we're going to make it a wrap. What career advice will you give to anyone in career or anyone's trying to start a career? They don't know what they want to do. What career advice will you give, Viv?
If you are not sure what to do, it's okay. Answer the questions that I mentioned earlier. If you're just joining the live, go back and answer all the questions, and you will be clear. It will be like night and day what you actually want to do. Okay? That's my one advice. My other advice is get a cohort of people around you. It might be one, it might be five. People who are as dogged or people who desire the same thing as you so that you can travel with them and you can learn so that the road is not lonely. I traveled a lonely road, and that's why I wrote a book so that nobody travels the road by themselves again. So find people, go to conferences, online, in person, and find people who are traveling the same road as you and travel with them. Because that way they'll be able to remind you your progress because sometimes you might forget. And my final thing in building your career, please enjoy it. Life is not worth it if you don't find joy doing what you do. That's my value. And I found that it's made even difficult things seemingly become easy to approach because I'm going to laugh through it. Even when I'm crying, I'm enjoying it because I just know that it's going to make me better. It's going to make me fulfilled. Eventually, it's all going to make sense. And please be patient. Be patient. Rome wasn't built in a day. That is true. Yeah.
Oh, and thank you so much. And that is one thing that I see that some people don't have being patient is a process. Because if you don't go through the process, it's a journey. And also, I usually say to people, understand that our journey are different when you understand your journey. And on this, I'm going to say that I don't know you can pick up your book, Viv. If you need more clarity, you need more answers to what you have said. The 5 W's and H. By the way, it's not in the book, but the story around it is in the book. If you need more clarity on this, how to build a corporate career, please get this. And I will drop a link on virtually on all the platform that we are on. and we'll be able to click on the link and then you can subscribe. And let me say this, I've said to people times without number, when you are trying to learn something around what you don't know before, you're not going to get that 1 hour or 2 hours to be able to learn it, right? I
True.
always say that. Give yourself 5 to 10 minutes. People will say, oh, that's too small. I said, there's one called the power of routine. You are not used to this. I gave myself 10 minutes within about 10 days and I finished this book. So it's very, it
Wow.
is one thing because I know that I get a lot of things doing, but because of the fact that I will not be able to get that 1 hour at stretch. So you do 5 to 10 minutes a day. In 7 days, if you do 10 minutes, that's 70 minutes. You will have learned something in 1 hour. You will have been able to finish a
Thank
course
you.
on LinkedIn. And because you are not used to it, just take it 5 minutes. You will
I'm
be able
taking
to
notes.
learn
Thank you.
something. Because it's not, if you need to learn business analyst pathway on LinkedIn, for instance, just give yourself 10 minutes a day and stick to it. What drives you is the ability to stick to it, the power of routine. You are doing it daily.
Mm.
So
Mm.
in the next 2 weeks, you will have done about 140 minutes. And that's about 2 hours, 20 minutes. So anything you learn in 2 hours, 20 minutes is something, is part of you.
Absolutely.
So even if you are going to prepare for an interview, your interview is next week, don't overthink it. Do 10 minutes, learn.
Mm.
By yourself, by the time you do it for 2, 3 weeks, it becomes part of you. You'll be able to increase the pace. And that's one thing I use over the years. I've been able to learn from different people. And one thing I will always say, do it. That's the same thing Nike said. Just
Just
do it.
do it.
Don't quit. And it's a privilege to have you, Viv, on this session. And
Thank
also, I know that Vivian is doing a program in January. Um, People sometimes start the year saying, "Oh, my New Year resolution." For me, it starts from now. Uh, those plans has been there. So when you get to the new year, is automated, autopilot. You don't need to stress yourself about that. So I will say that I will also drop this link. Feel free to fill the form, and Vivian will be able to get back to you on this. It's called Reimagine with V. It's a career edition. It will help you to be able to understand, know what you want, follow what you want. And if you think that you are, I've seen people that have reached out to me, they say, oh, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. I need to be able to
Mm.
switch a career. And I think I've spoken about that before, career
Join.
transition. And
Yeah.
I've seen people done that times without number. Sometimes it might
Yeah.
take 1 to 2, 3 years to understand the process, follow the process, so that at the end of the day, you'll not be frustrated on the job. I would say I'll drop the link also on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and
Thank you.
on Instagram. You'll be able to fill and just respond to the form. You'll be able to get it. And the link to get the book, I'll put it in my bio after this conversation. You can easily get it there because it will do you good. Because one thing I see, what you are looking for might not be in chapter one, might be in chapter two. And it's not, yes, that's one thing I realized. People always want to flip a book and say, oh, number 20, let me start from page 20. It doesn't work. Possibly you
No.
have missed what you are looking for. Start. And regardless, give yourself 5 to 10 minutes to learn. And you become, I recommend this for you. You'll be able to
Thank you.
build that career that you want, and you'll be able to discover that career. And then you'll be able to enjoy what you do. The bottom line is to enjoy what you do and love what you do. Thank you for me. That's my word from you today. And thank you so much, Vic, for having squeezing that time to be able to be here today.
Thank
And I
you.
really appreciate your the kind gesture. Thank you so much. And thank you
Thank you.
everyone for joining. Depending on where you are joining from, I will always say it is a great day. Go there, go out there and go and do great things. Thank you. See you some other time and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye.
Bye.